Everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. It's really great to have so many of you watching live. My name is Rob Hansen with Locumstory.com. If you're not familiar with it, Locumstory.com is a great resource that can help you learn what locum tenens is, how it works, and how it can fit into your career plans. Excuse me. We are firm believers that locum tenens can be a potential solution to some of the serious well-being and work-life issues facing healthcare providers today. We're really excited to have Dr. Drummond from the Happy MD with us to talk about burnout, how to avoid it, and especially how to avoid it during these trying circumstances. Before we introduce him, I wanted to give a few quick housekeeping items. As a reminder, you can't be seen or heard, but you will be able to ask questions throughout the discussion by clicking on the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We'd really love to have audience participation and answer your burning questions live. I'll review those at the end of the discussion so Dr. Drummond can answer them at the end. Dr. Drummond has a 45-minute presentation planned, and then we'll answer questions for the last 15 minutes. But if the Q&A runs long, he has graciously offered to stay on as long as needed to make sure all your questions get answered. If for some reason you have technical difficulties, please just log out, log back in. That typically fixes the problem. Also, as we had mentioned, you can get CME credits for this session. So the American College of Osteopathic Emergency Physicians designates this as live activity for 1 AMA PRA credit, and it's available for physicians, PAs, and NPs. And you will be emailed more information about claiming the credit after the webinar is over. Lastly, we are recording this webinar, and we will publish it as quickly as we can on our blog after we finish. And you'll get an email with a link to the session. And you can also watch the session later and get your CME credits as well. I think that's about it for the housekeeping items. So let's dive right in. Dr. Dike Drummond is a Mayo trained family practice physician. He's also a burnout survivor, an executive coach, and founder of thehappymd.com. He teaches simple methods to lower stress, build more life balance, and a more ideal practice. These tools were discovered and tested via Dr. Drummond's 3,000 hours of physician coaching experience. Since 2010, he has also delivered live burnout prevention training to over 40,000 physicians on behalf of 175 corporate and association clients on 4 different continents. So I think without further ado, we will turn the time over to Dr. Drummond. He's got a fantastic presentation prepared for us.
Thanks, Rob. Hello, everybody. Let's dive in. Oh my, I love it. I'm not on the right slide. Don't you hate it when that happens? Hang on just a second and I will put it back on from the beginning. How about that? Right on. Okay, here we go. Back in. Now let's start. Okay, great. Hey, everybody. Dike Drummond here from thehappymd.com. And I've got some stuff I want to teach you that comes from 10 years of our experience. So let's just dive right in. We don't have a lot of time. I hope got something to write on because we're going to bust some myths. Here's our objectives for today. Going to fill a hole in your medical education around burnout. These are things you should have learned along the way to being a doctor, but they just never made it on the curriculum. Going to bust 3 important burnout myths. Make sure that you understand these things because if you don't, it's going to be really difficult for you to prevent burnout in your own practice. And I'm going to show you 5 different burnout prevention tools that you can use this week that'll lower your stress this week. But literally, you don't know who I am. So let me tell you a little bit about who I am and where this body of knowledge comes from. So I'm a family doc, medical school at Mayo, family practice residency in the UC Davis system in California. For 10 years, I was a full service family doc in Mount Vernon, Washington. And if you know where Seattle is and you know where Vancouver, BC is, Mount Vernon is halfway along. Was a full service doc there, 500 babies I delivered. Ultimately, I was also a member of the executive team, chairman of the executive committee for several years in our 40 doctor multi-specialty group. And I loved being a doctor. I kind of felt as a family doc that it was half detective, figuring it out, and half teacher, teaching the patient how to take care of themselves. And I loved it until it fell apart and I burned out of my practice at the age of 40 in 1999. Every day that I went into the office for about 3 weeks, it felt like somebody was choking me out. I took a sabbatical, it didn't go away. And I ended up walking away from that practice and holding down a locum tenens job as a walk-in clinic doc for several years. until I got certified as an executive coach. And I've been a coach for 20 years now, coaching entrepreneurs and physicians. And my now ex-wife and I built a successful training company working with the Navy and their Lean Six Sigma people. In 2010, that marriage went away, that business went away, and I was burnt to the ground for the second time. And I decided to see if, as a coach, I could create a coaching business helping burned out doctors, because by then I had recognized that that's what had happened to me. So I started a website called thehappymd.com. You got to put the "the" on the front, because if you just put HappyMD, you end up at a porn site. So make sure you put thehappymd.com. And what's happened is 2011 is an auspicious occasion for burnout, because that's when the burnout rates began to increase in the United States. That's when the academic interest in burnout began to increase. And we've been riding a little bit of a wave, because I've devoted every minute of my professional life to figuring out how to recognize and prevent burnout and teach others how to do the same ever since then. So I have about 3,000 hours of one-on-one physician coaching experience, which means I've helped several hundred doctors across all specialties recover. And when I saw patterns in what was burning them out and what was helping them get better, I started to write blog posts that turned into a book. The other thing that's happened in the last 10 years is organizations getting bigger and bigger and bigger through mergers and acquisitions. And now all of a sudden, almost every medium-sized hospital in the country has 100, 200, 300 employed physicians around it. And the CMOs and other leaders of these organizations don't know how to take care of a population of doctors. So they said, "Can you come and train our people, Dike?" And I said, yes. And I actually have, and the numbers are bigger than this. We stopped counting a while ago. 40,000 doctors worth of training experience across 175 organizations in 4 continents. So what I've done is boiled that down into some teaching points that I can give you in about 45, 50 minutes. And hopefully this will be valuable to you. Please write it down, grab a piece of paper, and realize that we're in an angel singing moment. Can you hear them? Because right now, under usual circumstances, you would be in your practice. And when you're in your practice, it's a lot like being in a whirlwind. From the inside walls of the whirlwind, all you can see is the inside. You have to adopt a different posture. You have to pop out of the whirlwind in order to see patterns and plan to take new actions to make some change in your practice. So take a big breath with me. And as you exhale, just let go of anything that doesn't need to be here and pop out of the whirlwind with me for this next hour or so. Now we've got a quick poll for you. We're going to throw that poll up just so I know who is on the line with us today. So if you'll just check every box here that applies to you, we'll run this poll for a few minutes just so I can see if I need to tailor my comments toward a particular type of person, depending who's on the line here today. And I can't vote, so you won't see mine. Five, four, three, 2, and 1. Let's see the results. There we go. Okay, employed and happy, 41%. Okay, cool. Locum tenens, 27%. Excellent, excellent. Okay, great. I think I can shut this off myself. Okay, great. Let's dive in. Here's the 3 myths we're going to bust. I'm just going to say them. They might be a little confusing. That's okay. They won't be by the time we're done. Number 1, burnout has nothing to do with your batteries being run down. Number 2, burnout is fundamentally not a problem. It does not meet the definition criteria for that word. Therefore, burnout has no solution. Let's talk about this. So first question is, what is burnout? Well, burnout is a disorder of energy metabolism. If you look at your personal energy, and we represent it as a graph, it goes up and down day to day, depending on what's going on. But under normal circumstances, your energy, the trend line here is horizontal, and you maintain a positive energy balance. But in burnout, what happens is your energy level assumes a downward spiral, crashing towards the ground. You drop below 0. I'm going to show you how that works. And that's when the symptoms start to show up. And the 3 cardinal symptoms of burnout are fairly simple. Number 1, exhaustion. Physical and emotional exhaustion. When a doctor is exhausted like this, what you may have as the little voice in your head is a little voice that says, "I'm not sure how much longer I can keep going like that." And just so you know, doctors, this is a common voice in your head because doctors are all familiar with burnout and stress, but this is also a common voice in your head for all parents and for similar reasons. As a doctor and as a parent, you are in a position where you will put someone else's interests ahead of your own. The patient comes first, my children come first. And in that act of giving and in that act of being a helper, you can overextend yourself into burnout. The second symptom of burnout is cynical, sarcastic, venting. Another word for this is compassion fatigue. What I want to say right now is that venting can be dangerous, and here's why I say that. First of all, it is a sign of burnout. It's never healthy, but I see a lot of doctors who are under stress who will get upset for righteous reasons. The reason you're upset is true, and they'll go and vent, pound the table, get angry, and vent just enough steam that it gives them the ability to go back out into their practice and keep doing the very same thing. It drops you back into Einstein's insanity trap. What I'll say is that if you're venting, cynical, sarcastic, that's a sign of burnout. Something needs to change. So when you notice that you're doing this, think about what you might be able to do different. And I'll give you some ideas for that as we go through today. And then the last symptom is, what's the use? You begin to doubt the purpose and the meaning in what you do. Another common phrase here is, I'm concerned if something doesn't change, I'm going to make a mistake and somebody's going to get hurt. And when you see these three symptoms and the doctor's energy in a downward spiral, they go into what I call survival mode. And the thing about burnout is it's so much easier to see this in other people than it is in ourselves. So think about your people. Who are you worried about being burned out in your group, in your call rotation, amongst your friends? I'm going to show you a way to reach out to them before we're done here today. Survival mode. You go to sleep at night praying that you'll wake up and things will be better. You wake up, things are not, and you might have a little voice in your head say this common phrase: maybe if I'm lucky, I'll get hit by a car on the way to work today and I won't have to see patients. Now, if I'm in front of an audience of people and I say that, typically the doctors will laugh, and it is a little bit morbidly funny, but I tell you what, if you hear this in your inner voice, or if you hear one of your partners say this, it is a huge red flag. So please stop and look in the mirror, take some time off if it's you. Grab your partner, hug them and hold them. Ask them how they're doing if it's one of your partners. Because you know you never do get hit by a car on the way to work. You still have a full slate of patients when you get in there. And in survival mode, you're going to put your head down like a little train on tracks and just work your patients as quickly as possible to get through to the end of the day so you can drag your sorry butt home and hopefully feel better tomorrow. Praying for no work-ins, walk-ins, nobody barfs on your shoes. Watch your colleagues. It's easier to see than them. I'll show you how to reach out before we're done today. Now let's just take a little break, big breath. And what I want to do is open up a channel in your awareness, the channel of satisfaction. Take a big breath and let your awareness go back over the last couple of weeks in your practice. And think about your level of satisfaction with your practice. I want you to give it a number from 0 to 10. You might want to write this number down and date it because it could be a beginning point for coming up if it's not high enough for you. What's your satisfaction score? What's your number? And if you need a little visual cue, there you go. What's your number? I know nobody's ever asked you this because nobody's ever cared, but you get to notice this and you get to decide what's adequate for you. Now that you have your satisfaction score, right? What would you like it to be? Take a look at your number. How does it feel that that's your number? Would you like it to be different? Maybe even a half point higher, right? And if you want to change your satisfaction score to a higher number, do you believe that you can get there in this practice where you are right now by making some small changes? And again, I'll show you how to do that in just a second. What's the pathophysiology of burnout? How does it act in the bodies of its victims? Well, have you ever said to yourself, my batteries are run down, I just need a recharge? Have you ever said that? Well, if you have, I'm going to encourage you to stop it because it is totally inadequate to explain the way energy works in the body of a physician. If I'm the Energizer Bunny doing my Energizer Bunny thing and my battery stops, what do I then do? Starts with an S. I stop, right? Maybe I even fall over. But let me just ask you this. Look me right here in the eyes. When did you ever stop? When did you ever stop in your training? When do you ever stop when you have patient responsibilities? And if you ever were to stop, what effect would that have on your career? So let's just agree never to use this metaphor again, because it's totally inadequate. Here's a better one. It's an energetic bank account. That's a very simple structure that holds your life force. It's very much like the bank account at the bank that holds your money. It has a very simple structure, a full mark and empty mark, a whole bunch of area below zero, right? What is that all about? Well, hey, let's just look at the bank example. If you've ever overdrawn your bank account, do they close it? Yes or no? No, they don't close it. They give you fees and interest. And as you cross the zero threshold, they add in their fees and interest and accelerate your downward spiral. Well, what I can tell you is that all doctors are intimately familiar with showing up to work when their energy level is negative. Remember, the Energizer Bunny stops at zero, but you have been showing up for years at times with your energy below zero, because this red area right here for physicians, that's called residency. It's where we're pushed beyond all normal limits, basically to see if we can take it. It's not on purpose, but you have to survive the experience to graduate. I say that in the old days without work hour restrictions, residency is the energetic equivalent of waterboarding. It's a little better now with work hour restrictions, but we're still pushed beyond zero to get through the residency education. And here's the interesting part. I know you're going to keep showing up because you're not battery powered, but if I was able to measure the quality of your work down here when your energy is below zero and compare that to the quality of your work when your energy is above zero, would I be able to measure a difference? And the answer is yes, because we know from studies of burnout that burnout doctors have lower care quality, lower patient satisfaction rate, more errors, they turn over, they have disruptive behavior, they get depressed, they commit suicide. There's all sorts of negative effects of a negative energy level. So what we need to do in order to preserve ourselves, in order to take care of ourselves and our families, is we need to maintain a positive energy balance at all times, if at all possible, even though nobody's ever shown you this graph before. Because there's only one thermodynamic law of burnout. It's very simple. You can't give what you ain't got. You're going to show up, you're going to do your best, but when you show up with a negative energy level, you'll be a shadow of what you're capable of when your energy level is normal. Can't give what you ain't got. So real quick, just to seal this, if you would please hold up the index finger of your dominant hand with me, put your finger in the middle of your chest and repeat after me. I can't give what I ain't got. Thank you. And I want to be really clear. We always talk about patients, but this is 360. We're talking about patients, your staff, and your family, because burnout is exquisitely portable. If you remember the cartoon, Charlie Brown cartoon series, remember Pigpen? Remember his little cloud? Burnout's like that. This little cloud you carry around with you gets on everybody. So real quick, what I want to do is, again, open up another awareness. Big breath in. Let your awareness go back over the last couple of weeks. How's your energy level been? Remember, you were taught to ignore this in your training. We do a pretty good job of it, but how's your energy level been? Have you been in the white? You're above the zero line? Cool, that's great. Have you been perhaps dipping a toe? Some days are harder than others, but you're flirting with burnout. Real common pattern. Or are you in a full downward spiral? For the purposes of this exercise, it doesn't matter to me which curve is yours. The key is to be able to notice your energy levels, because you were trained to not do that in the education process. What are the causes of burnout? After I took care of about 40 or 50 docs, I started to see patterns in what was burning them out. All causes of burnout are sources of stress that drain the doctor's energy. Some of these stresses are ones that everyone has to deal with. So I call these the universal causes of burnout. I'm a family doc, so I'm a lumper. I put things in buckets. These are the 5 universal causes of burnout in my experience. Let's go through them one at a time. There's the practice of clinical medicine. The practice of clinical medicine is stressful because you're going to be dealing with people who are sick, hurting, scared, and dying. A long time ago, you stood at a fork in the road when you had a decision to make to go into medical school and become a doctor or do anything else. I call this the light worker's fork in the road. You chose to be a light worker. You chose to take your professional energy and expend it supporting the forces of light in the universe as we battle the forces of darkness, illness, suffering, death, dying, and family members' crazed attempts to deal with those things. That light worker choice has consequences. And one of them is that you're going to be dealing with people who are in stressful circumstances, making big decisions and dealing with their family members. And in the process, you will be traumatized because bad things happen to everyone. This is the nature of what we do as physicians, helpers, healers. Now, you will have days when you do come home with more energy than when you went in. Often it's when a patient or a family member says thank you to you. So please suck up that energy when it comes your way. But many times you're coming home from work with less energy simply because this is the nature of your work. You take 7 to 16 years to work your way through the system and become board certified. And then the second stress comes along. You stick your beautiful practice inside a job. And every job adds stress to the practice itself. I liken it to rings of a tree. So here's your practice, here's your job, here's your call rotation, your compensation formula, your EMR, your relationship with your boss. You could get mad at any one of these rings and say, it's epic, I am out of here, man. And you could quit. But your next job will just show you there's no such thing as a job that doesn't have rings. You could be a concierge doctor, it still has rings. Are you with me? I've dealt with burnout concierge doctors. The job adds stress. Poor leadership can be very stressful. There's even a saying, people don't quit the company, they quit their boss. We're going to talk about this a little bit more later. But if you have a difficult relationship with your personal boss, or if you need a boss, but there's nobody in that position, the position is vacant, it can leave you swinging in the breeze, and it can be a reason that somebody quits their job. Life can show up as burnout at work. Think about all the things that could be going on at home that would add to the stress of work or make it difficult for you to recharge when you went home. Could be anything. Kids, special needs kid. You have a physical illness. You're taking care of your old mother, right? Your aged mother who lives in the house with you and she gets sick. Money, could be any one of a number of things. But when you see somebody go into the downward spiral at work, real quick when you reach out to them, I'm going to show you how to do that. You have to ask a very simple question. How's it going at home? Because even though they're burning out at work, and that's where you're seeing it, it may have nothing to do with work. Last but not least is the conditioning of our medical education. When you were at the Lightworkers Fork, there was one thing you knew about the choice to be a doctor. You knew it was going to be long and hard. And you had to look in the mirror and say, have I got what it takes? And at some point you said, yep, I'm going for it. You had some evidence, you had some grades, and you had an ability to work harder and be smarter than other people that didn't go to medical school because you had some character traits. This is part of who you were, these things right here. Perfectionists get straight A's and workaholics pull all-nighters to get them. Now, ideally, these would be tools that you would take out and use and then put away. But in medical school and residency, you're going to use them every day. Nobody's going to show you the off switch. You're actually going to use these tools for the rest of your life. Over time, we tend to become these things. People who don't like doctors say doctors are this way, but we're conditioned to be this way by the education process, which, by the way, is hundreds of times longer than military boot camp. We're talking 7 to 16 years for those of us who went through the whole line. But wait, there's more. There's a couple of prime directives that we operate under too. The first one, everybody knows, looks like this. The patient comes first. Everybody acknowledge that. The patient comes first. And when you're with the patient's got to come first. But let me ask you this. Is it possible for the patient to come first 24/7, 365, and you have any hope of being a normal human being? Yes or no? Right. So when you're with the patient comes first. But when you're not with the patient, I hope you can develop an off switch that will allow you to shut the doctor off, come all the way home, and recharge your energy. I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to give you a resource for that later on here in the presentation. The second prime directive is way darker, way deeper, way more powerful. It goes like this: never show weakness. Doctors will do anything because of the survival contest of residency. We will do anything to avoid anyone thinking we are weak, can't pull our weight, haven't got what it takes. Just think if your residency director came up to you while you were in training and said, "Hey, you look tired. Are you okay?" What would you say? Just like that. And me, I'm fine. You ought to check Cheryl. She looks like trash, right? We all know we'd say something like that. So here's the full boat. This is a well-trained doctor. If you're being interviewed for a job, or if you're interviewing somebody to be a new partner, you're actually looking for somebody who's just like this, somebody who's going to work hard, get it right, take really good care of your patients, and do whatever it takes. And I'll just say, when they're with the patient, I would hope you're also checking to make sure this person can shut it off when they're not working and recharge and come back to do it over again. Because this conditioning denies our humanity, blocks us from noticing our own burnout. We also have a cultural thing about helping out fellow doctors, fellow people in the survival contest. And most of the doctors I meet who want me to be their coach are deep in Einstein's insanity trap, doing the same thing over and over again and praying for a different result. But we all know that that is crazy. So here's the big five. Universal. Now, there are hundreds of stresses that can combine to burn a doctor out besides these, but they're not universal. They don't happen to everyone. So let's go through just a few of them. Money. You've actually had webinars on money here before. Typically for doctors, it's not too much money. So it's about money and debt, paying off debt. There's bullies, toxic workplace culture, psychopaths. We're going to talk about that too. But if you've got a psychopath as a boss, you're in trouble. I'll tell you that right now. There's bias and discrimination. And let me be really clear. Our medical education system, our healthcare delivery system, our society are all shot through with bias and discrimination. Me, I'm a big, old, straight, American-born, native English-speaking white man, which means in our system, I've suffered the least amount of discrimination along my path to everything that I've achieved. If you vary from my points of description in any way, at any point, you've had to work harder than me, almost certainly, to get what you've got. And if you're being discriminated against right now, that can be one of the last straws in your burnout. And then there's malpractice. You don't have to lose a malpractice case to have the stress of malpractice and litigation and liability keep you up at night and burn you out. All it takes is a threatening letter from your least favorite patient. And then we can't go any further without talking about the dumpster fire that is 2020, right? Well, there's the pandemic that has, as I count it, 13 different layers of impact. There's the disease itself, and you may or may not be seeing patients. So you may be overloaded with COVID positive patients, or your practice may have been slowed down and is slowing down again because of peaks in the disease. You may be at personal risk. Your risk may be putting your family at risk, and everybody who's been involved in the carnage is traumatized. There will be PTSD in the wake of this. Then there's the economic impacts on you and your finances, on the shellacking the healthcare industry has taken, especially in the second quarter of this year. The general economy, look at your Main Street businesses that have gone out. And then, I'm just getting started because there's an election, political polarization, shooting in the streets, a potential second wave that we may be in the middle of right now. Did you know last year was the hottest year on record on planet Earth? It just never ends. So the way I see it is it's made things more stressful at work, and it's made it more difficult to recharge at home. So if you look at a standard whirlwind that the doctor is in, your everyday ordinary whirlwind, by the way, before COVID, burnout rates were 40 to 50% in every survey that had been done in the years previous. We don't have data since COVID, but we do know that stress levels are up. But if this is an ordinary whirlwind, here's the 2020 whirlwind. You ready? Look at that thing. It's wrapped itself around his leg. So what I say is that this year it's more important than ever to focus your efforts on taking good care of yourself and the people that are closest to you. Circle the wagons. Take really good care of yourself and your family. At work, take really good care of the people that are closest to you in your work teams, the people that help you see patients in your intimate work team and your call rotation. Take really good care of each other, have each other's back, check in early and often. These are extraordinary times and we are nowhere near the end of it. I don't know about you, I think we're in about the third inning of this whole COVID thing. So how do you prevent or reverse burnout? How do you do that? Well, first of all, we have to bust a couple of myths. So let's just do the other two myths real quick. You have to understand, write this down, burnout is not a problem. It doesn't meet the definition criteria of the word problem. Problem comes from mathematics. By definition, a problem has a solution. And if I apply a solution to a problem, what should happen to the problem? Yeah, it should go away, right? So let's just do this mathematics style. 2 plus 2 is what? 4. Done. I throw that fixed problem over my back because it doesn't matter anymore, and I pick up a new one. 8 plus 8 is what? Yeah, 16, right. The solution to burnout is what? And you'll be smart and say 32. That happens all the time. That's okay. But let me ask you, do you think there's one thing you can do one time and you never have to worry about burnout again? Are we all looking for this mystery ingredient that's going to solve burnout or not? And it's ridiculous when I say it that way. Clearly, burnout's not a problem. It's something different. It's actually a dilemma. It's a never-ending balancing act, an energetic balancing act. Looks like this, like a teeter-totter. On one side, there's the energy you burn. On the other side is your ability to recharge. Realize you never learned how to recharge in residency. That was a survival contest. You weren't going for optimal health, right? Realize too, your energy burn is work and home. It's holistic, 360. And realize too, that the balancing act never ends. So how do we deal with this if we can't solve it, right? You can't solve a dilemma simply because it's not a problem, but you can maintain the balance that you seek, not with a solution, but with a different S word. So what's the S word that goes here? It's an ST word, STR word, right? The word is strategy. What's the difference between a solution and a strategy? Well, strategy's got more than one step, but you want to be as few steps as possible or a strategy gets difficult. So as a coach, I'm always thinking about 3 to 5 actions. They have to be new actions if you want to get a new result. And because the balancing act doesn't ever end, they need to be habits. So those words new and habit are very important. And whenever you have a population of physicians or other healthcare workers inside an organization that offers healthcare services, you have a classic canary in a coal mine. The canaries are an indicator of the health of the mine. And you actually need 2 strategies to keep people healthy. Every canary needs their own personal resilience strategy, the things you do for yourself to take care of yourself and your family. And somebody's got to be watching the mine, and that is a leadership assignment. We do consulting, leadership development, and all sorts of stuff about coal mines, but that's not what today is about. So I'm going to stick with advice for you to build your own personal resilience strategy for you and your family. How do you build that strategy? Well, I believe that you can avoid everything you don't want and still not get what you want, because the only way to get what you want is to figure out what that is and go get it. I call that playing offense, not defense. So let's not just prevent burnout. Let's build a more ideal practice. And I'll show you a 3-step way to do that. The first thing you need, and I'm going to sound a little bit like the Wizard of Oz, the first thing you need is an ideal practice description. What's that? Well, grab a piece of paper and imagine you have a magic wand and write down, in an ideal world, if you were king of the forest, okay, if it was you designing your own ideal practice, what kind of patients would you be seeing, doing what kind of stuff, for what kind of hours and what kind of pay, on what kind of team and what kind of organization, where in the world? And whenever I ask a doctor that question, all I get is an open mouth stare, because nobody's ever asked them this. Believe me, your residency training didn't care. They just wanted you to graduate. And your current job description probably doesn't care. They just want you to do the job that you were hired to do. But now you get to notice how satisfied you are with your practice, and you get to line out what ideal would be for you and head in that direction. But you have to have the description to get started. Put it on paper. It's more effective that way. It'll take days to weeks to wake up. So just keep writing down what seems ideal for you. That becomes your target going forward. Let me give you a little tool here. I call it the VENN of Happiness. It's a 2-circle Venn diagram. One side is your ideal practice. The other side is this practice. And it's all about feelings. You know what this practice feels like, the one you're in right now. You can imagine what your ideal practice would feel like. How much overlap do you feel like there is right now between this practice and your ideal practice? 20, 40, 60, 80%. Notice how much overlap there is. And then step 3 is to build what I call your master plan. Ask the question, hey, if I was going to align this practice more with my ideal practice, what would I change? And basically you write this down, dump it all out of your head, get it on paper. These are the things you don't like about your current practice, but they probably rattle around in your head. You haven't written them down on a piece of paper. Dump it all out so you can begin to prioritize and take some new actions. Make the list. We call it your master plan. And then escaping Einstein's insanity trap, when you have an ideal practice description and a master plan, becomes very simple. You just pick one item on your master plan and take one new action. Smaller is better because it's easier to accomplish. Tell your team what you're doing because they'll almost always help you if you tell them what you're trying to do. Make sure you celebrate all progress with them. And then repeat. Pick up another item and take an action. And the question then becomes, when it comes to your satisfaction level, when it comes to your overlap with your ideal practice over time after making several changes, can you get the level of satisfaction you're looking for here? So when I'm working with a client, we've taken several actions over 6 months and I've been their coach for a while. I'll say, what's your overlap right now? And they'll say 70%. And I say, is that enough? Do you want it to be higher? And do you think we can get there here? Or do we need to trigger a job search and change your circumstances in order to get the satisfaction that you level that you need? Can you get what you need here? Or is it time for a job change? Our success ratio, how many people, what percentage of people recover in situ without having to change jobs? So what percentage of people recover from burnout without changing job versus needing to change? What do you think the numbers are? 50-50? This is what I've seen over 10 years, 70-30. And this 30% is very interesting. So let me just give you a little peek into them. One exception for staying and trying to change things as they are, right? To change your current job to something that'll work is if you have a psychopath boss. If it's clear your boss is a psychopath, the better part of valor may be an immediate job search. I've had 6 clients like this. In each case, we tried for months to dislodge the psychopath to make their life better. I'm 0 for 6. And psychopaths are pretty easy to spot for a coach from an outside perspective. For you to see them is sometimes very difficult. You fall under their spell, so to speak. What are the common components of a personal burnout prevention strategy? This is your Canary strategy. In our coaching practice, we've identified 235, believe it or not, different tools that you can use. And again, I'm a lumper, so I'm going to put them into buckets to help you understand the kind of tools we're talking about. I'm going to teach you an important one here today. So there's tools to get home sooner, practice efficiency tools, There's tools to build more life balance. We have tools to help you be the eye of the storm, calm and collected in the middle of the whirlwind, leadership power tools, and managing your boss, especially for employed physicians. Let's just go a little bit deeper. So get home sooner and build more life balance is about what you are doing. Eye of the storm lessons are about who you are being. Leadership power tools is about not working so hard by stepping around your Lone Ranger programming and letting your team carry more of the load. And then lastly, the manager boss skill set is around being able to navigate the bureaucracy you are in right now to get a yes when you need one from someone up the chain of command. So here they all are again. I'm going to show you a leadership power tool right now. And I've actually created a special little 3-part video training to teach our most powerful and popular life balance tools. I'll give you a link to that so you can watch those videos and start to deploy those in your life as well. Because life balance doesn't matter where you are, what your job is like. Life balance is always important, and it is a structure. It is not a skill or a talent some people have and some people don't. So here's the leadership power tool, the easiest, lowest hanging fruit for everyone. And all of you know this tool and you know you should be using it, and most people do not. If you do already, congratulations. Maybe I can show you some little ways to tweak it. So leadership is about stop working so hard by letting go of your Lone Ranger programming. This tool is a huddle. If you huddle, that's awesome. Listen up here and let's see if we can't add a little bit of power to it. But every time you don't huddle with your team, especially if you're locums and it's a strange team, right? You're getting home later than you have to. There's just no two ways about it. And yet when I say raise your hand, if you do a huddle every day with your people, only about 2 or 3% of people will say yes, even though everybody knows they should be doing it. Let's just walk through it real quick. And I encourage you to pick up the huddle and start doing it. Start doing it today if you're going back to work. Because here's what it's like if you don't huddle first. Look at this. This is your team. They're all in their whirlwind because everybody's got a whirlwind. And here you come bouncing in and everybody is overstressed with stuff coming at them from all different directions. How in the world can you organize clearly without first stepping out of the whirlwind together to decide how you're going to work with each other today? So I encourage you to step out of the whirlwind with your people in a huddle. The biggest obstruction to an effective huddle is always the doctor. Always, because you get too what? Yeah, too busy. Never be too busy for a huddle. Here's the basic huddle, very simple. Twice a day if you have a half and half schedule, so you have morning and afternoon patients twice a day. If you're in your OR, huddle in the OR. If you're in a hospitalist, huddle however many times you need to. You can call a timeout at any time of the day and huddle up again if things get hairy. Your whole team. For me, outpatient doc would be reception, person rooms, my patient, float nurse, me. Run your schedule, bring it back, look at all the patients, look at all the vacant slots, tell them how you want them booked. Make sure the patients have everything they need before they get there, and make sure you know who's sick out in the waiting room. You're preventing fires in the first place. And ideally, key points here, this is a stand-up meeting where you go to them. I've seen doctors who gather the people around them as they sit like kings and queens at their desk in their office. That does not work. So please stand up and go to them. Here's some power tips. Have them take a big, deep breath and let go of anything that doesn't need to be here right now at the start and end of that meeting, so you can be sure that they're out of the whirlwind, and feel free to make this little drawing and show them what you're doing, because everybody gets it every time. Very powerful little drawing. Make a human connection and celebrate something. Hey, who's got something they want to celebrate? One of your team members says, hey, my son just won the book report award in 3rd grade. That's awesome. Fist bumps all around. You might want to delegate the huddle captain role because we can't trust you. So delegate it to the most trustworthy person on the team and have them drag you to the huddle every day. And just so you know, on the rare days, hopefully rare days when you can't make it, there is value to your team huddling without you. So make sure the huddle happens. Make sure you have some fun. At the end, I double dog dare you to put your hands in just like a basketball team at timeout and go, yay, team. Now, I get a lot of eye rolling when I say that at live trainings, but I've never seen anybody do it where the team didn't pick it up and run with it. People want to have fun, even in a healthcare workplace. So huddle, huddle, huddle. Huddle with your people. Now, I put together a little mini training on 3 top life balance tools. There's one that's a weekly scheduling process that gives you week at a time life balance, called the schedule hack. There's one that's your off switch, lets you come all the way home, call it the boundary ritual. And then there's another way that we can show you how to make the boundary ritual work and you stay at low energy recharge levels, even when you're on call and even when you have charts to do that night. Call it sawtooth energy management. So those 3 tools are in a little video training series I put together for you at this address, thehappymd.com/balance. Remember, it's thehappymd.com/balance, and we'll give you that link too. But think about that. I'd love to see you in the little program I put together. What can you do to help the colleagues who might be burned out? Well, the first thing is you probably know somebody you're concerned about. You have to reach out to them. We cannot prevent all physician suicides, but we can reach out to all the people we're concerned about. And when you do that, I'm going to ask you to take your doctor hat off. So watch me for just a second. If I was going to reach out to my buddy John, I would do it like this. Hey, John, it's Dike. Have you got a minute? I would do this in a private setting. And I would say, well, first of all, John, I'm taking my doctor hat off now. So I invite you, you have to make the hand motion to do this. Otherwise, this technique doesn't work. So please put your hand on your head and say out loud, I'm taking my doctor hat off now. Let's do it one more time. I'm taking my doctor hat off now. It's just you and me, heart to heart. I've been watching you, brother. I'm concerned. How are you doing? Now, how is he going to respond to that? I'm fine. As a matter of fact, depending on who this is, you may get some intense denial. And that's okay. Is that them or their programming? It's probably their programming. But what I'm going to ask you to do is to be persistent. As long as you're concerned, reach out now and then. Ask them how they're doing, okay? Come from your heart. You could be saving their life. But take your doctor hat off first. And if you happen to be in a named leadership role, you're a medical director, CMO, whatever, I'm taking my medical director hat off. I'm taking my CMO hat off. Use your hand, take your hat off. Do it in a private setting. Ask them how they're doing. Repeat, as long as you remain concerned. And whoever you're thinking about right now, I encourage you to reach out to them sometime in the next 7 days. Question, how can you get started right away? Well, I've got a little 4-step plan here. Number 1, step out of your whirlwind. Take a big breath, pop out, look at your practice. Really, look at your practice. And ask yourself, how am I doing? Notice your level of satisfaction right now. Where are you at? Would you like it to be higher? Write down your ideal practice description so you know in an ideal world what you'd like your practice to look like. This becomes your target. And then just take a baby step based on your master plan. What would you like to change to move in the direction of that ideal practice? Take the step, celebrate it, take the next step, and repeat. Until it becomes clear, can you get what you need here? You've done everything you can. Is it enough satisfaction to stay, or do you need to change jobs? Compare your ideal practice description with the job opportunities that you interview for, because your ideal practice description is like an X-ray to tell you whether you're on track. By the way, when I teach somebody how to do a job search, they're asking a whole bunch more questions than normal, because we've learned what actually kicks people out of the job, and it's got nothing to do with hours and pay and benefits. And I found over time that locums is a fantastic place to take a breather, to earn the money, practicing your craft, but get out of the toxic environment you may be in, to get a taste of multiple jobs in some case, like the Baskin Robbins, you can have a taste scoop out of every one of those jugs, right? To build a different practice altogether, because for some people, rather than a bridge, locum can be a long-term career solution. So 3 myths busted. It's not a battery. It's an energetic bank account, and you were taught negative is sometimes normal. It's not a problem. What is it? It's a D word. What's the word? It's a dilemma, never-ending balancing act. And we aren't looking for a solution. We're looking for a different S word. What's the S word here, please? ST, strategy. And if you don't like your energy balance now, we're looking for 3 to 5 new actions that you're going to turn into habits. I've put together this little training for you, free video training at thehappymd.com/balance. These are the 3 top tools in my coaching practice for 10 years now, the most popular and the most powerful and easiest to learn of the 3 that we teach. Here's Einstein. Check it out. When he was alive, he was adamant he never said that. Doesn't make it any less powerful. When I think about a mission statement for a healthcare delivery company, I think about this. From the father of Hatha Yoga in America, to take joy in the well-being of others. And by others, I mean your staff, your patients, their families, your family, your community, everybody. To take joy in the well-being of others is to share in the riches of the world. And that's all I've got for you today. Let me stop screen sharing. Let's do some Q&A.
Thank you so much, Dr. Drummond. Really appreciate it.
Yep. Hopefully somebody's curating because I can't see.
I'm running through a few questions. It looks like you've answered. Here's one. How do you think the millennial generation is doing with burnout?
Well, what ends up happening is that when you take doctors and put them to a non-work restricted residency program, and then another set of doctors and put them through a work hour restricted program, it's a different training program that produces a different kind of a doctor. So, and I'm not saying good or bad, there's going to need to be a shift because guys like me, people like me, boomer doctors like me will be gone in 10 or 15 years, and it will be the millennials taking over, the work hour restricted doctors taking over. But what we see is, if you add it up, somebody who had a work hour restricted residency program may have had as much as a third less time with patients, a third less direct care time. And they also never worked as hard as some of these boomer docs did. So a lot of these boomer docs came out and worked like crazy. When you come in as a millennial to an organization that has a lot of older doctors like me, they have an FTE description that is gonzo, right? And so a lot of millennial doctors will come in and look at the FTE description and say, I'm not going to do that. I would like 0.8 of that. And so what ends up happening is there becomes, and there is a lot of groups where this is going on right now, a lot of conflict between the younger and older doctors based upon what they do or do not consider to be a normal full-time job description. And then if you're in the leadership position, there is a lot of concern about taking work hour restricted doctors and putting them in with a team of older quick practice doctors, because you have to onboard them and you have to mentor them because they don't have the same amount of education when they came out. And what ends up happening too is, at this point, if you were in a work hour restricted residency and you come in with a bunch of gunner boomers like me, you may be forced to work harder than you ever have right out of residency. So we're seeing that there are some people who have a very early burnout curve that didn't used to be there. Because it used to be you would come out and you would go into practice and it would at least be the same amount of work as what you had been through in your residency program. There's a whole bunch more nuance. There's a whole bunch of conflict and stuff that goes on that doesn't need to, because the sea is going to change. I go to these places where I have 300 doctors in the room with me. I've been to several places where I look out in the room and the 300 people look just like me. They're all in my 60s. There's a huge retirement cliff coming. I don't know what the FTE description will be in 2030, but because it will be populated by folks who had work hour restricted residencies, it's probably not going to be the amount of work that we do right now as a standard FTE. And there's a 120,000 doctor shortage coming by 2030. I don't know what the practice of medicine is going to look like 10 years from now.
Yeah, interesting points. Here's another question. One of our attendees says, I'm totally burned out, but I have to get back in the workforce. I'm the household income and I cannot take time to recover. Any suggestions on getting back into work when I'm still in a negative energy balance?
Well, there's a whole bunch of different suggestions I might have if I was able to ask you some questions. Here's the thing about burnout. It's always multifactorial in its cause, and you always have to make multiple changes to reset your energy level, right? So right now, if you're feeling that way, you may want to, and again, you'd have to violate your Never Show Weakness program. You may want to ask for some time off. You may want to, depending on your relationship with your boss, you may want to reveal that you're struggling. You may want to ask for some time off so you can do some emergency restocking of your energy accounts. But when you go back into work, the thing you can't do is what you've always done. If you always do what you've always done, you always get what you always got. Sabbatical and time off is not a cure for burnout, because if your trajectory is like this and I give you a sabbatical, you'll stabilize, but as soon as you go back to work, you'll be on that same trajectory. It's just a matter of time. So we might need to get you a break, but then we also need to notice what's burning you out. Much of the time it's EMR and documentation tasks. And again, I have to go into that with you to figure out where the hang up is. But I am sorry that you're in a place where you're the only income. There's all sorts of other questions about money that we could be talking about too. But if it's that dire, you may want to honestly tell people how you're feeling and see if you can't get some time off to get some of that energy back. And realize that's against your programming. It's a healthy thing to do, but everything about residency is said, never show weakness. So it's difficult to get it out of your mouth.
Yeah, that's certainly a big challenge. There's a question, hopefully I'm pronouncing this right, but one of our attendees says there is evidence for valent groups in mitigating burnout. Why do you think this works, and how do we get colleagues interested?
Well, and again, you can call it valent groups, you can call it, a pub crawl, you can call it whatever you want. Anytime you get a bunch of physicians out of the workplace together in any setting for any reason at all, it's therapeutic. This day and age, it's important for you to get out of work with your partners just to get to know them as people, because we're so busy at work where each of us go into our office and jump on our own gerbil wheel behind closed doors. We don't get to spend time with each other at work. So it doesn't matter. A valent group is just a support group. I do this all the time. I just don't call it a fancy name. But basically, if you get together and talk about the experience of being a doctor, or actually talk about anything else, so it could be a fly fishing group, a yoga group, a reading book, a reading group, a writing group. Could be an official valent group, but that has psychotherapy overtones on it and people may resist it, right? It could just be your monthly get together with your department for the lunch and the hour at lunch that you have your staff meeting. Anytime you can get the doctors who work together outside of work, it's always therapeutic. And what happens when these big groups have got hundreds and hundreds of doctors, you see their party schedule collapse. They may only have one holiday dinner, and that's the only time they get together. And we don't do well as doctors without the social connections to our partners that we used to have in the past.
Interesting. Here's a question. Do you notice an increase in burnout after being a participant in a malpractice case?
Of course. And you don't have to be in a malpractice case. All you have to do is get a threatening letter from a patient, especially one who's not your favorite patient, and you're going to be up at night. If you can think about your adrenaline levels, imagine your cortisol's up there, right? So any exposure, any thoughts about medical liability, which are always in the back of our minds anyhow, any of that kind of stuff can be tremendously disruptive. And if you happen to be in a case, if you happen to have a need to stand on the trial, to testify, that kind of stuff, be deposed, it can be very frustrating. I just want to notice that we're at the top of the hour. So I'm just going to say, anybody who wants to take off, I love you. Come visit us, happymd/balance, and let me teach you some life balance skills, but we'll stay here and answer more questions for those of you who want to hang out.
Thank you. Here's we had a couple of this different versions of the same basic question, and it says, in the time you've been a physician, have things changed in the work environment? Is burnout getting worse, or are we realizing it's happening more?
If you look at the history of the study of burnout, Christina Maslach started looking for burnout in the 1970s. She was actually studying engagement, and she found burnout and created the Maslach Burnout Inventory. And we've been studying burnout in physicians since the 1970s. And it turns out that prior to the onset of electronic medical records, that 1 in 3 doctors on average was burned out every day. 1 in 3. And then what ended up happening is there's a bump to about 40 or 50% at this point that is due, I believe, to a number of different things. One, medicine has increased its knowledge base exponentially. No one can master their specialty now. The best that we can do is rely on Watson and other tools to curate the latest research so that we can stay up to date. And the speed of the expansion of information is going up even faster. Two, the massive mergers and acquisitions that have made most physicians in the United States, the tipping point was 2017, where we crossed the 50% of physicians are employees. Most physicians are now employees, and nothing about our medical education prepares us to be employees. That's why we have specific training in leadership and how to manage your boss. And then probably the most pervasive thing is the implementation of electronic medical records that used an interface that doctors were not skilled in, data entry. We're not digital natives, those of us who are my age. I learned to type when I was 40, okay? It was on a Mac computer, a really old Mac computer, but that's how I learned to type. So now what you've got is you've got a very short-sighted thing. It's like the doctor's responsible for the patient and the documentation. I can remember little dictaphones, right? People used to write handwritten notes. Those things are lickety split, right? But now what ends up happening is the doctor is managing a very complex interface that's not designed by a doctor, that actively drains the doctor and gets in the way of the patient relationship because the documentation is harder than practicing medicine. And for some reason, the employing organizations have never seen in large numbers, they've never seen it fit to upstaff the back office to handle the increased workload of documentation. It's so bad right now that I have clients who've successfully implemented a scribe, and they say, my scribe is great. They take care of about 80% of my notes, but I still can't get home on time because of all the notifications and the email and the my chart and everything else that comes flying out of that system that I have to respond to. So there was a significant bump for EMR at that point in time when it was implemented in the teens, tens, right? And so now the job of being a doctor is significantly different than it was back when I was trained, paper charts and all that kind of stuff. And let me show you one other thing that I think is important to realize. If this is the baseline risk of burnout in the non-physician population, which hovers at about 28%, there is a progression of professions that are at increased risk for burnout. And the reason they're at increased risk for burnout is these professions put their clients ahead of themselves. So when you think about it, the least elevated one is hospitality, retail and hospitality, where the customer's always. And then you all have all the helping professions like teachers and therapists and nurses, right? And then you've got physicians, right? The patient comes first. And then you've got law enforcement to protect and to serve. And then the highest ones are the warfighting military. And you'll see that burnout and suicide rates go up above the background average in that order when you ascend that ladder. Physicians are between nurses and law enforcement and warfighting military.
Interesting. This one might be a tough one. If you had to recommend just one action to prevent burnout from occurring, what would that be?
Well, first of all, that's a question that is going to run you down the solution arm. First of all, I'd refuse to answer it. So there is no one thing. There is no magic bullet. That is a pipe dream. That is wishful thinking. Wouldn't it be nice? I'm going to come on this webinar, and he's going to tell me the one thing that's going to turn it around. Now, if I had a chance to talk to you, there might be one thing so significant that it might make a difference, that was significant enough that you would think that it was enough of an improvement to stay where you are, but I don't know what that is. The key is this: write down your ideal job description. Take some time. It takes time to wake up. It's been asleep for a while. Write down all the things you could change to make a difference, and then pick one and do it. And just so you know, we're doctors, right? So we're going to want to do 8 things, not one. So just do one. There's only one right number, and that number is 1. let's see, I always have it written down here. The right number is 1. And make it a small one. Don't pick the biggest one. That's a thing doctors do as well. So pick one thing you're going to do. You're here now. Pick one thing you're going to do differently when you go back into the whirlwind. And you know what? I've given you a place to start. If you don't huddle, why don't you start there? Why don't you start there? But if you find yourself saying, what's the one thing? What's wrong with me that I can't find the solution? Are you with me? That's that magical thinking and that misidentification of burnout being a problem.
Yeah, that makes sense that it's got to be a very personalized approach for each person, and there's not one, silver bullet, as you mentioned. You just mentioned huddles, and somebody asked, how do we make time for huddles? They're doing weekly huddles, which were helpful, but the daily huddle, it sounds like it might be more challenging to fit in.
Yeah, it's just a challenge to your creativity. So I would ask the same question, not to you, okay, if you're the doctor. See, here's the thing. This is doctors and their Lone Ranger programming, right? Here's the Lone Ranger in action. Have you ever sat in your office, and I can smell it in this question, right? Have you ever sat in your office trying to figure out what to tell your team to do? Well, that's Lone Ranger. So here's my request of you. Let's get rid of the Lone Ranger. You just asked me, how could we do a huddle around here? Don't ask me, ask your team. Hey, everybody, I went to this webinar, and huddles and everything, they say we ought to try and do it every day. And I'm wondering how you think we can work it into our day. Ask them. Because again, when we're talking about arranging schedules and things, when we're talking about what happens outside the door when you're inside the room with the patient, they're the experts. They're the ones who are out there. You're the patient. There's lots of things you're not expert in. Ask your team how you would make it work. And if you're saying to yourself, huddles won't work for us, yes, they will. It's just a question of creativity. You have to ask the question, and you have to bring your team in to help you out.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Here's a question about, can you suggest any non-clinical opportunities?
For what? For income?
It sounds like it.
Yeah, no, I can't. One of the things that I see, because everybody's different, one of the things that I see a lot of is magical thinking. I'm going to quit being a doctor and I'm going to be a life coach. Really? How much money you want to make as a life coach? Well, I make 300 now. That sounds about right. Good luck with that. But there's a lot of magical thinking. But I would say that if you want to, and you have the ability to shift your career in a financially responsible way for you and your family to a different way of making a living, that's typically a process. And you say, well, I could hit the lottery. Well, lottery winners don't tend to keep on hold of their money. I even know of a guy who's won the lottery twice and he's bankrupt twice afterward. Okay, so even the lottery can't save you. But so for instance, look at me. I decided to become a coach. This is my second business as a coach and an entrepreneur. It's taken me 10 years, okay? Not that it would take you 10 years and you might be able to go faster, but the question of can I recommend? No. 2020, here's my crystal ball. And what I would say is follow your interests. Find people who have an issue that you can solve for them, or problem or a dilemma that you can help them address. And if you enjoy doing that, move in that direction and try and find a way to continue to serve. Because for most people who are physicians, light workers, you're going to want a career where you are helping, healing, making a difference, right? And it has meaning for you. You're probably not going to go from being a doctor to being a Wall Street banker where all they're looking at is spreadsheets. But then there's the whole thing about side gigs, right? And all that kind of stuff that you can incorporate in an existing practice if you have those degrees of freedom. But I can't recommend, what's a hot career for doctors? Keep showing up at work and making your money until you have a financially responsible and realistic way to make money in a different channel.
Yeah, yep, that definitely makes sense. Let's see, we've probably have time for this last question.
Okay.
What books do you think are helpful for mindset modification to become aware of pitfalls like Lone Rangers, magical thinking, etc., and work past those?
Books. books. Well, I would recommend John Kabat-Zinn's original book, Full Catastrophe Living. And I'm going to get all Zen on you here. I'm going to get all Buddhist on you here, but anything by Thich Nhat Hanh, right? And if you're finding that mindset and unsupported thoughts and feelings are an issue, you're going to want to pick up any meditation practice you would like to do. Because in meditation, what you do, if it's a formal meditation practice, you're going to sit and breathe and watch the flow of thoughts and feelings in your mind and get acquainted with the pattern for today and be able to take that into account when you step from your yoga or your meditation practice back into the whirlwind. This is the essence of the training we do that I call Eye of the Storm, is to be able to be centered and take that with you like a bubble.
That's helpful.
Meditation is the most powerful way to get there.
That's a super helpful suggestion. I know personally, I've enjoyed meditation and yoga, and that's helped me a lot. Thank you so much. I think that's it for questions.
Right on.
We really appreciate everyone today for attending, and Dr. Drummond especially for his inspirational words. I think we've all learned something new, and we'll continue to host webinars. Locumstory will do webinars every few weeks. We've got some really interesting topics, really interesting guests. So keep your eye out for future emails about upcoming topics. If you have questions about how to get started with locums, visit locumstory.com to find your answers, or reach out directly to us. And there's some information on the screen right now. Questions, you can email us at info@locumstory.com. You can check out our website, locumstory.com. You can also hit up Dr. Drummond at support@thehappymd.com. He also mentioned the website where he has some, or the page where he has some resources. I believe it was thehappymd.com /balance. And we will also be sending out a recording of today's presentation. We'll publish it on our blog, and you can access it there. And you can also get CME credits for watching that recorded presentation. So if you have any friends or colleagues who would be interested, be sure to let them know. Thank you so much.
Bye.